I'd like to call to order the December 21st, 2010 meeting of the Louisville Planning and Zoning Commission. Announce that we do have a quorum present. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the November 16th, 2010 meeting. Any questions, comments, corrections for staff? If not, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from James to approve the minutes of the November 16th, 2010 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 on the agenda is the regular hearing plats. Item 3A is the Hawkeye Realty West Addition preliminary plat, lots 1 through 3, Block A, and lots 1 through 2, Block B, 49.89 acre tract zone local, commercial, and multifamily 2, located on the southeast and southwest corners of FM 3040 and Valley Parkway.
The subject plat is a preliminary plat. It's being prepared in preparation for further subdivision of the property into smaller lots for sale to individual owners. At this point in time, staff has met with a couple of potential applicants for some of the smaller lots, and we're been in discussion with a major gas station convenience store chain for a portion of Lot 1, Block A, and then a multifamily development in Block or Lot 3, Block A. The preliminary plat meets the requirements of the General Development Ordinance with the exception of the one variance. The variance is to allow full median openings at 600-foot spacing along Valley Parkway in lieu of the required 1,320 feet, or roughly a quarter-mile spacing. Valley Parkway on the city's thoroughfare plan is designated a major traffic carrier, and the General Development Ordinance, specifically Section 6-103, requires full median openings on a major traffic carrier to be 1,320 feet apart. On the overhead, I've shown roughly where the median openings are proposed. At the top of the drawing, we've got Round Grove Road, and then going south on the new section of Valley Parkway that has just recently been completed. There's a median opening proposed at this location, and then another median opening proposed down here at this location. If the ordinance were applied with 1,320 feet, the first median opening would be down closer to where they're proposing the second one, which means that this multifamily lot would have no median opening access at all. Staff is in support of this particular variance. Valley Parkway, south of 3040, has a somewhat limited access to Highway 121 at its southern terminus. When you get down to the very south end, you can get on the southbound service road of 121 and then access the entrance ramp to get on 121 southbound, but there's no direct access to get onto 121 northbound. So staff really in the future does not see this section of Valley Parkway south of 3040 acting as a major traffic carrier. As a matter of fact, Edmonds Lane, which is just a little ways east of here, has a normal intersection with Highway 121 and a traffic signal and full median opening access. And it's already that's also designated a major traffic carrier, and the city's in the process of extending that across 121 into Vista Ridge Mall Drive, so it'll be a continuous extension all the way to the mall, and we really foresee that road being a major traffic carrier as opposed to Valley Parkway. So ultimately, I believe that staff will be coming back to you folks as the T-Board to visit this section of Valley Parkway and its designation on the thoroughfare plan at a later date. And if that does occur and we remove this as being a major traffic carrier, then the 600-foot spacing as proposed would actually comply with our ordinance. So, long story short, we believe that this is a reasonable variance given the circumstances on this property and with this section of Valley Parkway. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have, and the applicant's engineer is here this evening as well in case there's some questions that I'm not able to answer with regard to the particular development.
Thank you, David. Do we have any questions for David on this, or potentially for the developer's engineer? Anybody? Okay. Thanks, David. Any discussion, or do we have a motion on this plat?
You want to open the public hearing?
This is a regular hearing, it says, right?
I'd make a comment.
Is this a regular hearing, Mary? No public hearing needs to be open on this, right? Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'd make a comment. This alignment was considered probably 25 years ago, and at that point, at that time, it was discarded because not having connections down at the end down there. So I'm glad to know that the staff is going to go back and revisit this thing and do something about it, because at the time it had a connection down on the south end, but that connection is no longer there, no longer available, let's put it that way.
Thank you, Bill. Do we have any other comments or questions? Anyone? If not, do we have a motion for this agenda item?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from Bill to approve item 3A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries on item 3A. Item 4 is public hearing zoning. Item 4A is consideration of a zone change request from local commercial to Old Town Mixed Use 2 located at 571 West Main Street, 1.25 acres, further identified as Morgan Addition Lot 1, Block A. The request is being made by 571 West Main Limited, the property owner, and this is case number PZ 2010118.
Good evening, Commissioners. The item before you this evening is a property, again, located at 571 West Main. It's currently an existing office building with various tenants in it. The applicant is looking to rezone the property to Old Town Mixed Use 2, which would comply with the Old Town Master Plan. As you can see on the map, some of the adjacent properties have already been rezoned to Old Town Mixed Use 2. Staff is in support of this. Essentially, the applicant is looking to gain greater flexibility for setbacks and essentially for his sign, monument sign, so he'd be able to move it closer to the street. Staff is in support of this zone change request.
Thank you. Mary, do we have any questions from Mary? Any discussion with the staff on this one? Okay, if not, then at this time I'll open the public hearing on item 3A. Anyone wishing to speak in reference to item 3A can do so at this time. Once, going twice.
Make a motion to close public hearing?
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from James to close the public hearing. Is that James? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed on item 4A. Any final discussion or motion on this item?
Make a motion to approve?
Have a motion from Karen to recommend approval. Do we have a second? Second from Bill. This is for item 4A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 4B is consideration of a zone change request from office district to specific use, centralized water collection system for gas wells on 5.461 acres located south of FM 3040 and West Case Lane, further identified as H. Turner Survey Abstract 1248A, Tract 1A. The request is being made by Williams Production on behalf of the property owner. This is case number PZ 201000910.
Good evening. You have a somewhat unique case tonight on your agenda, and so I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce some of the staff that's here that you normally don't see at your regular meetings, primarily to provide information to you on this agenda item and to answer any questions that may come up during the course of the meetings that our staff is able to provide answers for you in course of your decision making. So of course you know Mary and David, they regularly attend your meetings. We also have our new Assistant City Attorney, Mike Buchek, with us. If you have any legal questions that may come up, Tim is our, Ippolito is our fire marshal, and I think at times he does attend your meeting, but Tim is also basically heads our gas well permitting. And so he has tremendous amount of information on the permitting side, although I want to make clear that we are not dealing with the permitting issue tonight. We are primarily zoning with the surface use, a unique surface use in association with the drilling permits. And then I'd like to introduce our new planning administrator, Peisha Boomsma. She will be regularly attending your Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, so you get to know her well. And she has replaced Jean Lewis's position. So with that, again, we are all here primarily to provide information and answer your questions. Going back, this is, again, a very unique zoning that you have on your agenda, and the first one that you see in association with gas well drilling. The only reason this item is on the agenda because this particular gas well operator has has requested a very unique system of developing their sites, which is different than other gas wells that we have in the city. As a general rule, gas well permitting comes under a separate ordinance, and so normally you will not be seeing that, especially if they are requiring with all the ordinance requirements. If they are meeting all the ordinance requirements, gas wells permits can be issued through staff, so through Tim's department. If they don't meet certain requirements, especially distance requirement, they go to the City Council for public hearings, so they will not come to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This particular site is proposing to have a battery, a tank battery that would service 3 well sites that they have. We have provided you with the overall map in your packet and a lot more information that actually is required for the SU zoning part of it. But we wanted you to have all the information regarding permitting just to make sure that everybody's clear on how the sites are going to operate and how this particular SU zoning is going to service the 3 other sites. So I don't want to make the applicant has a fairly lengthy presentation. I'd like them to make their presentation, and then if you have any questions following the presentation, then we could answer questions, but I would like them to make their presentation before we open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Bobby Dolock. I'm a civil engineer with G&A Consultants here in Louisville, 111 Hillside Drive, right down the street. How's that presentation come up there? Oh, there it goes. Just got to hit the button. I put together a series of slides to help kind of walk you through your 4.5 inch. I hope you all enjoyed the reading. 4.5 inches of information. As Nika indicated, much of that information has to do with the actual permitting of the wells, but we felt it relevant to share with you. The actual site in question is down south of Spinks, kind of over in the southwest corner of Louisville. Right across the street is Bakersfield Park, which you see. Right here is Duncan Lane. This is Bakersfield Park. Here's the wastewater treatment plant for Flower Mound. And there's I'll get a blow-up one here. Kind of zooming in on the site before you is we call the ACE pad site. It's it's 5.461 acres of disturbed area for the actual pad site itself. The access road is currently the access road that goes down to the Duncan gas pads compression site, which is right here. This is operated by Chesapeake. It is a compression station for gas to take it to market to the Atmos line. It's already there in operation. And we're simply going to access this pad site via the existing access road to the compression station, and then come over to what we call the ACE pad site, the centralized compression pad site. Kind of walk you through here's kind of an overall. There's the existing Duncan pad site with the gas compression that's there. The proposed ACE pad site that we're talking about tonight. And up here to the east is the Cobb pad site. That's another proposed site that's going before the City Council in January. And then what we call the Chin pad site up off of Ace Lane. So those are the three pad sites that Williams has under lease and drilling obligations to drill off of. I'm going to kind of highlight an interactive line. This line right here is the proposed water line. So when gas is drilled on these pad sites and water is pumped down to frack the rock, the water comes back up. And typically, on a typical pad site, you would have your water collection tanks on that pad site. The water would come up, go into those tanks, and your water trucks would go to those pad sites and pick the water up and then take it out of town to a disposal well. Well, because Williams has such a large leasehold here, and they have 3 different well sites, they thought to be a good neighbor and to be a good steward of the area, to minimize the truck traffic going to each one of the pads, that they would bear the cost of piping the water from all the pad sites to one pad site down to this particular pad site, the ACE pad site, to collect the water down there in a location that was less obtrusive to future surface development, such as the area up around the Chin pad site and the Cobb pad site. So that's one of the pipelines. The other pipeline is the gas pipeline. The red line here, as you see highlighted, would be the proposed gas line. And you notice it runs from the Chin to the Cobb down to the ACE pad, and then from the ACE pad, after it's collected and it goes through the dehydration unit on the ACE pad site, it will go over to the compression site that's already there, operated by Chesapeake, and then taken to market. So they've reached an agreement with Chesapeake to utilize their existing compression station. This last line that I'm highlighting is the third line. It's a 3-inch line, and it's actually a line that goes from the ACE pad back up to the Chin pad and the Cobb pad, and it's called what we call a gas lift line. It's where they pump gas back up to the other wells and pump it down the hole, so it helps lift the water up out of the hole. It helps that well, the livelihood of that well, so it's a gas lift line. Now, all 3 of these lines are in the same trench, and that's a separate permit that's permitted from the pad sites that goes through the staff process, and we've almost got approval of that pipeline alignment and those plans. But they're all in the same trench. They all serve the wells. The reason tonight is for the SUP zoning, the specific use zoning, as Nika explained, for the ACE pad, because it is the collection point at which all the water's collected, which is kind of outside of your gas ordinance, because traditionally you would collect them at each pad site. So this is the 5.46 acres, and this just represents what it would look like with the drilling rig sitting on it, and under the drilling, that's the size of the pad that would be there. And then I included this. The pad will actually be shrunk down from 5 acres to a little over 3 acres when they're actually done with all the drilling. And the reason I show this slide is it just shows all the equipment. It shows specifically what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about these bank of water tanks in the middle of the pad site. This is where all the water will be stored from all of the pad sites. certainly some of these tanks, if we weren't asking for this centralized facility, some of these tanks would be here just for the ACE pad site, and then the rest of these tanks would be spread out over the other 2 pad sites. Then this little area here is a gas lift compressor, and it's actually the compressor that pumps the gas back up to the other pad sites down the hole that helps lift the water. And that will be completely enclosed in a barn-like structure. I believe it's in one of the tabs in your book. It kind of shows that it's fully enclosed. It's a soundproof, a barn-like structure that surrounds that gas lift. Then you've got some other gas applicable equipment here, a dehy unit. You have a launcher that takes the gas across over to the gas compression facility, to the existing gas compression facility to the west. And then in your packet, in your binders, just for discussion purposes, in case you had any questions, I've included all of the exhibits that were specifically in your packet that show where the wells are going, how they're being drilled, the transportation route, the grading plans, the drilling plan, all the way down to the irrigation plan, how the pad site's going to be irrigated, and such, just to give the P&Z the overall picture of why we're asking for this SUP. I do have Chuck Bassett here from Land with Williams. I have Steve Vogel with the Pipeline Division of Williams, and then Bert Middleton. He's over all the construction operations, is actually building the pads and getting them ready for the drilling operation to happen. So hopefully I've brought enough people to answer any questions that you might have, and if we can't, we can certainly get you all the answers. And with that, I'll yield to the chairman and the board. And
Thank you, sir.
For any questions?
Do we have any questions? Yes, go ahead, BJ.
Oh, I don't need to be first.
Oh.
I'm sure there's other folks.
Well, you shook your head first, so you shouldn't have done that. Yes.
Go ahead.
I was going to do some discussion first with him before we do the public hearing. Yeah. Do we have any questions at all?
Want to go ahead? Safety of the pipe. Is that steel pipe that you're going to be laying down? Is that steel pipe?
Yes, sir.
Or is it going to be poly pipe?
Oh, no, it's steel pipe.
Steel pipe?
Steel welded.
Okay.
To all state and federal regulations. They're pretty heavily regulated, the pipeline is.
Exactly. What's the depth on the pipe?
It ranges anywhere from 20 feet up to about 5 or 6 feet.
20 feet?
Yeah, it's relatively deep the whole way. We've got plan and profiles that have been reviewed by Dave Salmon, and in most cases, we're relatively deep. We're under all of y'all's utilities or any possible future utilities as we cross the roads. And
Also, when you tie that pipe in, when you're crossing these roads, are you going to put poly pipe in there when you tie them in, or are you going to weld that pipe?
yes,
Going to weld the pipe?
it's welded and pulled through.
Pulled
right.
through?
And it's relatively deep as it crosses both roads.
Okay.
It's like 18 to 20 feet deep at the road.
Just want to be safe when they cross that road.
Oh, yeah.
Jim, did you have?
Just a basic overall, before we get into some of the specific questions, this particular methodology, is it used in terms of all the tanks, consolidating all the tanks there? Is this methodology used elsewhere in the Metroplex or in other operations like this?
Yes, Williams has had very good success with this operation down in the Burleson area where it's unique in the sense that you have to have a large leasehold and you have to have, pads that are in close, relatively close proximity to where you can actually pull this off. It's not applicable, and that's why Nika was saying this is a very unique situation here that we're able to ask for this for the city of Louisville. There's some places where it's not practical for Williams to even propose centralized because they're just spread out. You're too far apart with your pad sites. The answer to your question is it has worked really well in Burleson. They have been effective. It's truly to minimize the truck traffic to, when you're getting into urban areas and you're looking at, where the best place to bring your trucks to collect the water, they feel like that the ACE pad site, being it's right next to the compression station, is the site to bring this before P&Z and the council and ask for this consideration.
Anything else, Jim?
CJ, no?
Sure. Mika, were we able to get rid of that pesky arrow that bothered me so much?
No. I think the question is the transportation route, where they take the trucks. We do have a requirement that they need to take the truck route, to show the truck route as part of our permitting process, and take it as soon as they can to a state highway. So they would be on our roads as little as possible on city roads. So Mr. Gilmore brought up an issue
Those are
on
green
this
arrows
and
on
this.
the board.
Right. This arrow, I think there was an arrow that was going beyond Edmonds.
Yeah, it's
And
not
they
shown
wanted to
in
know
this
why are they
particular.
going beyond Edmonds? Why can't they just basically have...
They're not. They'll go 30, 40 down Edmonds. They won't go back into town. If there was an inadvertent arrow
Arrow,
past Edmonds, that's not right.
So we want to make sure it's
Not
taken
correct.
off the map.
That's
Is it in?
not a problem. If it's on there, I certainly will take it off.
And if I'm out of base to put this in public instead, I've got a few others. Have the city and the drillers actually looked at maybe going with slightly taller tanks to reduce the footprint? A couple of reasons: it would reduce points of failure, and it would reduce opportunities for emissions from those tanks. So I'd be curious if, because that sits below grade, if we couldn't actually reduce the number of tanks by making them slightly taller.
Williams isn't opposed to it. They're calling for 6-foot tanks now because, everywhere we go, they want us to lower the tanks, the profile. I would suggest that we keep the low-profile tanks on the chin and the cob, because there will be 2 tanks up on each one of those pads that'll be emergency tanks. However, down on the ACE, as long as it doesn't violate the lease agreement with the owners of the property, because they fully intend to develop the property that's north of here, the rest of their property. So we'd have to look at the lease. If it didn't violate the lease and it was okay with the city staff, we could go to 8-foot tanks or 10-foot tanks. It certainly would decrease the number because it's all a volume thing. We might be able to drop a couple tanks off.
Just thought.
We can work with Tim, and ordinance allows 8.
Oil and gas ordinance limits it to 8 foot tall, there have to be a variance for the taller.
If it drops the amount of equipment to go to 8 foot, it might be worth looking at. I don't know if that's something that we need to decide here. It's a function of surface area, and I know we've got a lot of citizens that are concerned about emissions control.
Right.
And so having fewer tanks with less emissions, even though they're taller, they don't have as much surface area for emissions to be dealt with.
In this particular case, because this is an SU zoning, it certainly can be a condition of the SU zoning, if that's what the board decides. And if it's feasible for them to do it.
And it is feasible, and at the pleasure of the commission, we'll go 6, 8, 10. We're proposing 6'5" is the height of the tanks that they're proposing in the application, because that's just what we've kind of been going to around these urban areas. But that logic certainly makes sense.
I guess I would want to see if you moved them to 8 foot, would it take out 2 tanks or would it take out 8 tanks? If it's only 1 or 2 tanks, is it really worth doing?
Which is a question I'm assuming we'll probably need for one of these gentlemen over here.
Right.
Okay.
Well, they don't, Steve can come up. They don't have the lease with them, so we'd have to read the lease to make sure we could go to the 8 foot.
We would prefer.
Tell them your name and your...
Steve Vogel. I live in Weatherford, Texas, work out of Fort Worth office. We would love to have bigger tanks. Bigger tanks work better than smaller tanks. More air, everything works better. But like I said, everybody wants smaller, so we're trying to accommodate as best we can. Don't know for sure how many it would take out, but it would change the number. And we would entertain, we want to work with y'all, whatever's in y'all's best interest. Just tell us what you want, and we'll make sure it gets done.
Okay. Well, it sounds like that's something that maybe doesn't have to be I'm good with the way it is now, but if you could explore that with Tim and see what we can do and what's within the lease agreements,
Yes, sir.
That would be exceptional. We'd appreciate that.
We'll do that. As long as nothing slows down the process of getting approval, we'll do whatever we can.
Fair. Next question. We have a kind of a running landscaping question that keeps coming up on all of our oil and gas, to go ahead and allow an abatement for that. And the answer that the city has been working with the other gas drilling companies is to prepay that or put it in an escrow. Would you all be willing to make that adjustment for this special use instead of holding it off until the pad site is completed, which is 30 days after the pad site's completing? And Tim maybe can speak more to that.
If you're asking with the variance request that will be going to council where they are delaying their landscaping until after they've reduced their pad site, there's no plans right now or requirement to put that in an escrow account. So it's a condition of their permit that they put the landscaping in
Right.
as part of their permit.
The council's been changing those and not giving the easement. They've actually been instead asking to put that as dollars in either our tree remediation fund or into a landscaping fund for that particular property in the future. And the point being is that the city now has control of that dollar as opposed to it potentially going out for who knows how long.
Yes, the one permit that we've has gone to, or excuse me, it was a variance request on the Chesapeake pad, the Duncan pad that's adjacent to this, was we felt as staff and also the applicant that it was in a location where the landscaping really wouldn't have benefited anybody. It's down in a depression or a hollow. There's a lot of natural landscaping, so we felt that it was better to put those funds, which totaled almost $30,000, into the city's beautification fund rather than just landscape that one particular pad site. Again, it's not proposed for this one. Is it something that could be entertained? Certainly.
Right. The difference between, and I pointed on the arrow on the screen, the variance for Chesapeake was right down here below their compressor station. So to come back and landscape around that, no one would ever see it. So they offered the money up to the city to plant trees in the other part of the community. The difference with this plan is that from a lease agreement, Williams is bound by their lease agreement to plan all this landscaping because, again, ACE is going to develop their property. So even more so than the city, I mean, their lease terms dictate that they have to plant this landscaping in a timely fashion upon completion. I believe your permitting is in the town, if they get their permitting for these pads, is 180 days with a 180-day extension. So we're talking a one-year time frame here. So with the lease agreement to plant the trees, we're asking for the waiver to delay, because if you go back to the overall pad site, 5.46 acres, and then when you get done drilling, you're able to reduce that graveled area down to 3.1, we wouldn't want to plant the trees around the 5.6 and just dig them back up and plant them around the 3.1. So we're just asking for a delay of the timing. It's kind of one of those unforeseen things when the ordinance was written, that these pads would actually decrease in size. I mean, you'd think that you build this pad, it would be the size that it would always be, but that's really not the way the Chin, the Cobb, or the ACE are. The terms of the lease agreement is that the pad can be big enough for the drilling operation, but when all the wells are completed and they're going to leave for the next 20, 30 years, that the pads immediately get reduced to their production size and the landscape go in. So it's just a little bit different than even Prologis that was approved by staff up off of McGee. They asked to delay the back half of their landscaping and put in the front half of their landscaping along McGee. So every pad site has a special, they're in a different part of town. They have special stuff. So
Did they put some of that revenue in an escrow, however? They put those dollars in an escrow account or something like that?
I don't believe so.
No, they did not.
Okay.
They didn't.
The reason being is, and the reason that my understanding that our permitting process still has that built in, is because there could be some variability on when that pad site is complete.
Correct.
So you guys could come back in 2 or 3 years and drill more in that particular pad site. It's not likely, but it is possible. In which case, at what point does the landscaping actually get put in?
Well, me and Tim talked about that, and because the permits are issued at 180 days with a 180-day extension, you're pretty much, this is well master planned out as how many wells they can get on each pad and how much area they're servicing and everything. So I believe you've got a safeguard in there. At a year, you're going to be reducing this pad down and planting your landscape because your permit's only good that long. I mean, there's 4 wells on this pad site, so that's the function of.
And I believe you stated that the lease agreement is actually probably a little more restrictive than the city, correct? I mean, they want you to get that landscaping up as quick as possible.
The restoration of the property and how it's restored is all detailed back to existing or better conditions. When they restore the pad back down to 3.1 acres, the landscaping goes up. There is no. You can see this kind of really down in a hole next to the compression site, but there is no water down here. So, when you're planting this many trees, this is quite a few trees and landscaping, and to irrigate this, you actually, there's not a close water line to even get down here for the irrigation system, so they're actually drilling a water well in this northwest corner of their pad that will be operated to irrigate the landscaping around this pad. So when they get done drilling the wells, they'll punch a water well and have a water tank there and all the controls to keep all of that landscaping alive, because that was the most feasible and logistic-wise way to irrigate. Now, the Cobb and the Chin pad are a little bit different. You have city water lines up there, and we'll tap into the city water line, have a water meter, and we'll irrigate around those pads from the city water. But so this is a little unique down here.
TJ, other?
Oh, sure. Talking about gas lift compression for a second, what other alternatives do we have for like plunger lift or some of the other technologies that are available? Might cut down on noise and emissions.
Steve can probably answer that better than me.
To do it this way would, again, cut down on equipment. With Barnett wells, it's not uncommon that each and every well site would need gas lift. So that would mean 3 different compressors, plunger lifts, on those particular sites. If we do it this way, it relieves other equipment from having to go in, and some of those may end up being permanent. In the gas business, temporary becomes permanent real quick with some of these wells. They're real finicky. So with this particular situation is the easiest way to keep other equipment, because this pad shrinks down, the Chin pad gets even smaller. So what we're trying to do is just keep the impact and keep the footprint on the other well pads as small as possible. Because if we have gas lift, that means sound around it as well. If we can keep it down here, we can control the sound, we can control and get done everything that we're going to need to do for quite a few years. Leaving
This particular compressor lift actually may be able to take care of Cobb and Chin as well.
That's the whole idea behind this, yes, sir. That's why the line comes all the way down.
Okay.
This is to take care of water compression for everything on each of those well sites. This was just the best place to kind of put it, make the smallest footprint at a site, at a mine, more than some of the others, which, as you know, are pretty visible as you drive by.
And are you going to be installing any type of condenser units or any remediation on that condenser or on that compressor?
No, sir. It'll be a separate unit in and of itself. We're going to let Chesapeake do the compression for us. The gas lift is a smaller machine and will be housed and taken care of, on its own. It'll be self-sufficient.
Do you have any plans for emissions with the tanks, as stated? I know you talk about you work with green
Yes, sir.
methodology, but there was really no detail in the site plan that I saw that said you've got some sort of remediation for Vox or anything like that?
Yes, sir. One of the things that kind of perked my ears when you were talking about bigger tanks, those things are much easier. The bigger the tank, the more efficient they are, not only for the validation of water, but also for green. In those particulars, as you've got some margin there and buildup. And we have an EH&S department in Fort Worth. It's not Tulsa. It's in Fort Worth that checks on a regular basis all of these particular sites, not just for green and emissions and noise. We try and track ourselves to find out before we get a telephone call saying, hey, you're out of compliance with sound, or we've found something down here that we don't like with some emissions. We try and find that stuff first if we can. So that's done on a regular basis, and we hold ourselves in the Fort Worth office to pretty high standards because we've got someone in-house that goes around with the meters and checks those particular things. And when the telephone rings, our people are there to take care of it and meet any need. We don't dodge telephone calls and make excuses.
Fair enough. Thank you. And let's see. I had maybe a statement more than anything else. On page 4 of 8 of your summary, there's a statement, Williams requests that Louisville permit compression on the ACE site to be installed at a future time should gas volumes be larger than the compressors at Chesapeake's facility can handle. I'd like to be clear that we are not approving that language, that you all are welcome to come back.
We understand.
But that we're not approving. I don't believe we should approve that here as part of the language. I think at some point we can talk about it, but Chesapeake's got quite a facility down there, and I'd like to see it left at Chesapeake's facility if at all possible.
And if we have that problem, it's a good problem to have. That means there's a lot of gas in Louisville.
Understood.
And they'd have to come back and amend their SGP to add. And again, these compressor stations, Williams is a little bit different than what Chesapeake has over on their pad side. I mean, those are fully enclosed barn-like structures. They've got several examples of them around the Barnett Shale that they've put in. So we do understand what you're saying. We're not asking for that tonight. That was simply a statement that if the gas is really good here in Louisville, that there might be a need for additional compression that Chesapeake's not able to provide. And at that time, this site down here would be the site that they would put the compression at. It wouldn't be the Chin or the Cobb. They would be set up, because of this system, they would be set up to handle that off of the ACE pad site. And just kind of being transparent, because this, as Steve indicated, is pretty finicky on how well these gas wells are.
Sure. And I tend to pick nits on this stuff simply because if there's ever a conflict, they're going to go back to the documentation, and the only thing we have is this piece of paper and what's being filmed in here.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking the questions. So I appreciate you guys giving me some feedback, and at that point, I'm done with questions for the moment.
For the moment. Thank you, TJ. Do we have any other questions before we open the public hearing, since we have a lot of given information? Anybody? Okay, then at this time, I will open the public hearing on item 4B. We have a lot of information that's out there, so anyone that would like to speak in reference to any of this information can do so during this time of the public hearing. Seems to be pretty quiet. I think our public is the gentleman over there from the... Go ahead, James, sorry.
Motion to close.
I was going to say, you look like you were going to say something. Okay. We have a motion from James to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second from Jim. Let's close the public hearing on item 4B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed. Okay, so do we have any other discussion for the city staffers, for the gentleman over here representing... Yes.
I'd like to ask one question. Did I understand if when we're drilling the well, the water supply is going to be from the city system? I'm showing my ignorance on this, I understand. But I grew up around seismograph, and we always had water tanks, water trucks around when we were drilling wells, or test holes.
Oh, there it
And
comes back.
Where's the water coming from? Is
Okay.
it going to be demand on the system?
What's going on right now is on Mr. Cobb's property, on Tommy Cobb's property where the buffalo are, we're digging an ultimate detention pond for the ultimate development of his property. So when his property develops to the highest and best use per the land plan of Louisville, we designed his pond for a retention pond, and it's shown blue on your screen here. That's the pond at which all of these wells will pull water from to actually drill and frack their wells. So that well, and in that well, you've got a 12-inch water line that runs on the south side of Spinks, and we're tapping across with an 8-inch line, installing a 4-inch water meter that'll produce, I think, upwards of 1,500 gallons a minute, of which Williams and Chesapeake will be buying water from the city. They have to work with Carroll on that. You know, they're not going to be during the middle of the summer when we have water ration. They're not going to be able to buy the water, so they're going to have to time their fracking accordingly. But that pond, if you drive by there, Bert's starting to work on it right now. It'll be 13 million gallons that pond has the capability of carrying. So they'll have to stage their fracking of each well accordingly for that pond to catch up and be able to buy the water from the city. So in one way, the city is going to be selling a lot of water for these 16 wells for Williams, and then another few wells from Chesapeake down in this area. But that is the water source.
Okay.
We are buying water from the city of
It's
Louisville.
going to be a constant level pond, is what you're telling me.
That's correct.
Supplied from the city water system.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to have a fluctuating demand on that pond.
That's right.
Is what I'm hearing.
When they go to frack a well, they suck a lot. It's a lot of water demand within a 3-day period.
Okay.
So they'll frack in stages, and they'll pull that water down, and they'll be buying water and filling it back up. So they might, in between wells, they might have to wait just a little while for enough water to get back in the pond to fill it back. I mean, the actual meter won't keep up with the amount of water that they pull during a fracking operation.
That's a pretty small meter.
That's why, yeah. It actually produces a lot of water. 1,500 gallons a minute is a lot, and it's a little bit above that. But we did the calculations on the time of the fracking, because we were going to go with a 3-inch meter, and we said no, we're going to have to go with a 4 to make it work. So
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Other questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you, sir. I think we have everything we need. So do we have any discussion, any other discussions, comments, feedback, anything? Statements? TJ gave a statement there before we vote on this specific use zoning. Don't think so. So if not, Jim, anything?
No, only that in understanding now a little bit more by the explanation, it sounds like the plan is a lot more attractive than having them spread out through the city. And this is an area that we all know and love, that no one else wanted to do anything on, and it's obviously going to help the people that own the property to generate something from it. And really what we're looking at is the requested variance. Not anything else that is part of our big binder. It's the specific variance that's called out here, and I'm sure that legal staff has done the due diligence to ensure that the city is safe from it. And frankly, I'm pretty pleased with what they're offering. That's all.
Thank you, Jim. Karen, would you like to comment? No? Okay. Okay, if we have no other comments at this time, do we have a motion for this zoning request? Is that TJ? We have a move to approve from TJ.
Second.
Second from Karen. This is to recommend approval to City Council, the zoning specified by item 4B. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I think Bill got it, and Karen, and Jim got the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.